with the benefit so far?
Yes, this meeting convened from Tuesday this week, and it's been serious work. At the time, we had to even break into technical committees to crunch the numbers and to look at the numbers. And as just reported by His Excellency Governor Senator Hope Uzodinma, Governor of Imo State, on where we are, that is the true position of things. As we are currently, the OPS, Organized Private Sector, and the government side, they have recommended 62,000 naira to be the minimum wage. But for us, from labor, we felt that with the current economic hardship and with the difficulty in the land, that the sum of 200,000 naira, the sum of 250,000 naira should be the what would be okay as the minimum wage. So these.
Good morning, everyone. Happy weekend. Today is Saturday, 8th day of June 2024. The Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress are set to resume another deadly strike from next week as negotiation with federal government hit another brick wall. The federal government is proposing to pay workers 62,000 naira. That is additional 2,000 to the 60,000 that the labor unions rejected. While the state governors are saying that they will be able to pay the sum of 54,000 naira. These people are joke. But before we go into that, look at this building. This is the building that the federal government budgeted 21 billion naira, not 21 million. I mean 21 billion for the Vice President House, Abuja. This Vice President's House was commissioned about 2 days ago. Now tell me, is this not cement and block? Is this a stone or iron wall? I don't really understand that. The FCT Minister Nyesom Wike budgeted 21 billion naira amidst this economic hardship. Anyway, this is another top stories that the farmers are warning ahead, just as United Nations warned that hunger is coming to Nigeria. And this time around, the farmers are blaming the insecurity and the fuel subsidy crisis. For me, I don't think it is the fuel subsidy. I think it's the insecurity issue that is disturbing Nigeria.
Well, that's a surprise development for me. It has come to a time the government at every level should show empathy to Nigerians, especially those who work under them. We've seen a whole lot of effort by the state and the federal government to raise revenue. This revenue is for what? We have also seen that this effort to raise revenue is imposing a whole lot of taxes and levies on private sector. So you see a situation where government is having a whole lot of resources in their own pocket. There's no doubt that the best employers of labor are private sector operators. But you see, it's not a sin to work for government. The question is, private sectors employ people and pay them millions and millions of naira with a whole lot of allowances and all that. Why is government not able to do that? Is that a poor management of resources? If they cannot manage the funds, then they have to review the policy and allow more money in the hands of the private sector. But I really think that whatever the state government change, Nigerians, particularly me, will not want to see us go back to the events of last week. Because in every aspect of business I'm involved in, we pay the highest price. The aviation, the entertainment, and all that. They should quickly buckle together and then find a solution to it. As a matter of fact, once there was a decision to remove the subsidy, and once we see the depreciation in naira, they didn't need to wait for labor strike to go into negotiation. They should have invited labor. These people are part of this country.
That's a good point. Let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. What do you make of that report that these guys, the governors, are saying they will not pay 60,000 naira because they're unable to pay it?
Well, I have expected it, Charles, for all of us that are following the trends of events in this country. recall that governors for the past 5 years, even from the previous administrations, the last minimum wage increase, over 20 states have not been able to measure up and pay. They are perpetually owing the old minimum. So when this conversation started, and like Prof said, we were expecting government to anticipate a reality and hedge against it, in line with what should be in this country, the economic vagaries. But then again, what is more important is, you see, the conversation now is expanding over and beyond the federal level. Now you have governors coming to volte-face look at the citizens of this country and tell us that they cannot. So basically they are preempting the conversations with regards to inching beyond 60,000, which to my mind is highly disappointing, because it presupposes to me that the governors just want to shut down the country. Because what it means is that they are telling the federal government, indeed Mr. President, that the conversation beyond 60,000 shouldn't take place. I totally agree that federal government should be engaging, like you rightly says, a minimum wage conversation, and therefore this minimum wage conversation at the federal level is supposed to be the benchmark. And there's a whole lot of conversations and calculations with regards to what is 60,000 naira giving you today.
Absolutely.
And then you have governors that have not been paying 30,000 naira as at 2019, while some of them are facing grabs for all manner of things. And now we have them practically saying they are not paying 60,000. I think this is a watershed moment. It's a build-up to a watershed moment, in my mind, on the positive side, because it's a reality that everybody will face. And I'm happy the governors are taking this position, because some of us have been saying that the governors have been serially and consistently failing Nigerians. And every time pointing at the federal government that they are not the ones delivering, while we know that 65% of the failure of delivery of dividends of democracy in this government is the responsibilities of those governors who go and fund the embers of ethnicity and tribalism to say it is Abuja's fault. Well, now everybody can see, and I guess the die is cast. The days ahead will tell us whether Nigerians will sit back and take this as it is. And I can tell you it's not going to work.
That's a good point. And let me ask you this, Professor Okonkwo, because you are obviously private sector, as Baba Yusuf is as well. But there's been some concern raised. There was talk about, you know, the possibility of something like 105,000 naira. Suggestions were being made around that sort of figure for, you know, to be considered as the minimum wage. But there's also concern raised that they would need to put in place some measures to ensure that the amount of money isn't eroded by inflation. Because once you raise money like that, you suddenly find that prices are all going up.
Yes, theoretically, that's correct in economics. But I don't think that money is coming from this tiny top-up on the civil service salary. Nigeria, both state and the federal, is rich enough to pay the civil servants a national minimum wage of 90 to 100,000. I think that's where it should be, 90 to 100,000. That's what I see. They are rich enough, and this will not cause any damage. The inflation is there anyway, and this is not the salaries we earn that is not enough for anything. It's not workers' inflation. Workers' inflation is the bulk money that people just wrap up and stock somewhere and then throw it around like, you know, if it's not money. So I don't buy that idea.
Right.
Theoretically, yes, but for that volume on top of this economy, we should then. Why do we have economists? Why do we have professionals? They should sit back and then set some gatekeeping measures to ensure that does not happen.
Right.
But leaving these people on a minimum wage of 30,000 naira is a crime against humanity.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And Baba Yusuf, the more radical elements, and I don't know if you're one of them, but the more radical elements have suggested cutting the salaries and benefits that accrue to political office holders, many of whom are already very wealthy, like the president himself, the governors, members of the National Assembly. Do you think that would amount to something substantial?
Oh, absolutely. And I will take this opportunity to say what I've been writing about a couple of weeks, adding to what Professor Okocha was saying. And to put it this way, Charles, there are different types of corruption. The biggest form of corruption is moral corruption. And I sit here with all sense of responsibility as a patriot to say that any employer, private or sector, that refuses, and I'm saying it with the emphasis, to pay what I don't consider minimum wage. I don't like minimum wage, Charles. I rather call it living wage.
Yeah.
That is unable or refuses to pay the living wage like the governors are doing is morally corrupt. And taking it from there, the foundation and the pillars of corruption in every society is a society that refuses to pay what can take employees home beyond 1 week, whereby they cannot take care of their hospital bills, they cannot pay their school fees. Indeed, even the armed forces and the people you are selling to arrest people go to the same market. So it presupposes that people, I mean, the theory or the concept of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs will prevail. And then people will become desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. And if you recall, or I remind us what Lee Kuan Yew said, the former president of Singapore, that one of the things they did as foundational for the progress of Singapore was to ensure that when they hire people in public service, they consider, starting from ministers and all that, if they are coming from Goldman Sachs and all that, they try to match as close as possible what you are earning to dissuade you from putting your hands, quote unquote, in the cookie jar. And the same trickles down to the civil service. And here we are, you have the police, you have the EFCC, you have the armed forces fighting and dying on in the trenches, and then you have, quote unquote, the political class and the elites that are bawling for want of a better word. So there's an optics issue there as well. We would tell people to cut and cut and cut, they cannot cut anymore, but the leadership, with all due respect, are not living responsibly. You see people fighting older packages, and people that have been governors for 8 years, people that have been top-notch for 20 years are struggling over cars. And these are the kind of people that are saying, continue cutting, you know, your cost. So if, for example, I see 15% cut down on the entire cost of living, federal, state, executive, legislature, then we are talking, then they can save the money to pay what I call a minimum living wage, and people will start taking them seriously. For the governors, there's no excuse for this. If the money is not enough, there are 3 critical pillars of leadership: value creation, value innovation, and value protection. During campaigns, they sing to the high heavens what they can do. We want to see what they can do now.
Good point. You want to weigh in on that?
Yes. You see, if the political office holders would offer to accept salary cut, that's okay. But it's just a show of solidarity.
Yeah, but part of it is also for them to go after looted money as well and recover as much of it
as
possible.
Because but as far as I'm concerned, official salary they earn is not our problem. We can allow them to have that. What is the problem is other add-ons, allowances and all that, and the ones we do not know. And then more importantly, the corruption.
Those are the issues.
That's what we suffer about. So if you look at how much they're earning, I mean, in the private sector, in my own establishment, I know we pay as much as that. And the whole of other private sector even pay as much. So that's not the issue. We know how much the president is earning, how much is president's salary. So the salary official is not a concern. But they should understand that the part of the governance is to create wealth and not to collect money and spend money. The states, if you are faced with a challenge to increase the salary from a private sector perspective, you have to think of how do I create wealth? How do I turn around the economy of my state? How do I make things work? Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is what is missing in all this conversation. But the cat and mouse relationship between government and civil servants is unhealthy. I've never seen in this country where we went that down as low as we did with the last strike. Everything was shut down. These are two people who should have a symbiotic relationship, thinking for each other. And the words and languages coming from different government sectors, officials, is just showing that they see labor as the enemies, their employees. And it does not also mean that you have, if you become a political office holder, you have all the knowledge to negotiate. There are experts who can manage better relations. There need to be a better relation between labor and the government. But again, this country is such a situation where we all need to feel for each other. All right? And I think also that thinking about inflation is not enough. Now you know this money has to be paid. Create policies and measures to stop this inflation. And this inflation measure is just wrong policies. Do you understand? So these people are just asking, equate our salary with the current economic situation.
Okay, well, we're going to, I'm sure there are going to be developments in the next day or so, reactions to this move by the governors and so on. So we're going to keep watching that. But let's get to the other topic that we were going to discuss, which is the petrol subsidy. Is there petrol subsidy or not? What do you think is going on here?
It's very obvious that the administration is trying to manage a situation with plausible deniability. Simple arithmetic. We all know that the landing cost of PMS is over 1,000 naira, and we're selling it at less than 1,000 naira. So it's elementary that somewhere the buffer is coming. So that is a reality. The point is, how is that helping our situation vis-a-vis the earlier topic we talked about and the bigger issues that are coming, you know, going forward? I think the government is trying, I keep on saying this, government should stop managing optics and start managing expectations. And that is when they can craft strategies that will be practical, pragmatic, and impactful. Performance is not measured by events and activities. Performance are measured by impacts and outcomes. So it's very obvious. So government should stop. It's allowed. Sometimes you do plausible deniability. But what do you have in place? And I will say this now. I think the biggest problem is not the removal of subsidy, because almost all of us are on the same page on this. But the House, one of the things that I think, having arrived at a milestone of 100 days, 1 year in office of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his team, with all due respect, is I don't see a clearly thought out strategic blueprint overarching. See a lot of strategies, policies churned out. And because of that, there's no policy coordination, there's no policy coherence, and you see things running into themselves. It's time for introspection to have a strategy. This is the reality. Mr. President took that decision, and some of us said it's good, but maybe he should have waited to do what I call looking at the book of reality. And the book of reality...
Before that happened.
The book of reality...
That seems to have just been a slip.
Yes, that book of reality is not the handover note by the former president, but the book of reality is what he sees when he gets it in the office.
Okay, well, we've got about a minute and a half, sadly, and the program will have to end, and I'll go and have a jolly great Friday night.
Weekend, I know you.
But,
you don't want to waste your weekend.
But, would things, just coming off the back of what Baba Yusuf is saying, would things have been this bad and prices wouldn't have shot up so high if the subsidy hadn't been removed and at the same time the naira was devalued?
Yes, I think it's about the devaluation of naira. Because everything is being calculated on the basis of naira value against dollar. So I think this is also a time to rethink. All right. Few weeks ago, or last month or 2 months ago, we saw naira hitting 1,000 to $1. What was the magic? It could be done. So I think the government should not only be looking at the minimum wage, because if they could bring naira down to $1,000, then they can come back and say, hey, let's negotiate on this lower national minimum wage. The other thing also is that, briefly, like you said, we all knew that this subsidy has to go. But if this subsidy has not indeed gone, and this figure that have been peddled around trillions of naira, who budgeted for that? Where is it coming from? What impact?
It's a very alarming development.
It's very alarming development.
So let's